Some of the same questions that I would ask anybody, I'm going to ask of a virtual assistant because, hey, they're people with lives and desires and on and on and on.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
Welcome to the program, everybody. Last time we met, for a minisode anyway, I talked about the argument that hiring overseas is quote-unquote un-American. I think I dispelled that myth a little bit. I got a little bit of negative feedback. That's all right. I plan on that. That's okay. Today, I want to talk a little bit about how do you hire a VA, and specifically, how do you interview a VA? I want to pause here and remind you that we are sponsored by ANOW Software. ANOW is the way that I keep track of everything, not just in the appraisal workflow, but also in my office. Analytics. What are the numbers saying? What is my business doing? Am I doing better or worse? anow.com/coach is where you go to find out more. Again, it's anow.com/coach. All right, folks. It's interesting about VAs. For some reason, when I coach individuals about VAs, there is this, and sometimes mostly unheard or unsaid, but definitely thought idea that hiring a VA, say in the Philippines, and by the way, that's kind of the country that I've settled on for the most part. I'm certainly open to other parts of the world, but I've had the most positive experience with those in the Philippines. And by the way, I've hired VAs in at least a half dozen countries over the years. And for some reason, my best experiences have come from the Philippines. But this idea that when you hire outside the U.S., that it somehow is different. and granted, it is, of course. It's different to hire somebody in the Philippines than it is, somebody that works in your office. I get that, right? But I'm not even sure how to put this. There's more of an undergirding idea that you're not dealing with a full person. And I don't think it's a racist thing. I just think it's a distance thing, right? It's hard to not be able to shake someone's hand and rub shoulders with them physically, and be in the same room with somebody, even if it's somebody, across town, even if it's somebody in another state, even if it's domestic, if you will. There's still this idea that hiring somebody that you will probably never meet in person is different than hiring somebody local. And I get it is different, but it even goes to the idea that we should treat them differently, that we should set this up differently. And yes, there's some technological things that you've got to deal with, right? You're meeting with them over Skype or Zoom or something of that nature, rather than sitting down with them, shaking their hand, and sitting across a desk or a conference table to interview them, right? But the process that I have found that works best when I hire somebody doesn't really change much when it comes to overseas versus local. There's a couple things that might be a little bit different, right? But it really comes down to the physical setup rather than the methodology. Principles remain the same, regardless of whether you're hiring your Aunt Mabel or somebody in the Philippines, right? This idea that you should treat it any differently, I think is silly. Now, there's some cultural things that are certainly different. Okay, there's some things to watch out for that are certainly that you probably don't have to worry about when you're hiring somebody local, right? But the idea that they are a human being with feelings, with schedules, with family life, with backgrounds, with everything else remains the same. And one of the best things that I have done over the years to be able to hire the right people, and by the way, it doesn't always happen. Let's just be honest, I've had better luck hiring local and maintaining and retaining than I have long distance. Now, I also will tell you I've got a virtual assistant that's been with me almost 4 years from the Philippines. And so that doesn't always play out either. But for the most part, they're a little bit more transient, I think, when you hire overseas, and understandably so. But this process of hiring them, this process of going through the steps that you would normally take to hire anybody else, to me, remains absolutely the same. And one of the steps, and it's one of the biggest steps that I always take before I hire somebody, whether they be local or overseas, is a personal interview, is the opportunity to sit down with somebody, to look them in the eyes, and to have a discussion, to ask questions, to go through this process of getting to know them, to talk openly. And by the way, whether it be virtual assistants overseas or local, my way of interviewing has changed over the years. I used to be very systematic. In fact, I used to have a piece of paper that had all the questions on it that I would print out, and I would put their name at the top, and I would go one by one, and I would ask every question exactly like it was written on the paper. And I had a reason to do that, right? I've learned over the years that that didn't work really well, and it wasn't very personable. Now, I actually start out my interviews, and one of the first things I say is, this will probably be a little different than any interview you've had in the past. And they kind of chuckle usually and smile and kind of, get a little bit curious. And I say, listen, this is going to be a professional interview. Yes, you're here to see if you're the best person for the job opening. I mean, there's no way around that. On the other hand, I'm not here to interview you. I'm here to have a conversation with you. So let's talk. And I usually start out the question by saying something as simple as, tell me about yourself. What's brought you here today? And then I pause and I let them talk. I want to share with you some of the other questions that I ask virtual assistants when I interview them when I come back from the break. But I first want to pause here and remind you about a great tool that I use in my office and have for several years, and that is ANOW software. ANOW is where I go every single day. I can't remember a day that I haven't gone, maybe the weekend, but certainly work days. I don't remember a day that has passed that I have not been on ANOW software and checked out what my business is doing, checked out what a specific report is doing. What's the process? Oh, we need to pull comps. Oh, we've got a problem with the legal script. Everything happens in ANOW. Everything has taken place. And here's the cool thing. You all know that I have a big office, including virtual assistants, and multiple people are in ANOW all day long. And if somebody does something in ANOW on a report in the morning, the AMC called and put this on hold for such and such reason, then somebody can also log in the afternoon to find out what's going on in that report and very quickly surmise, oh, the AMC must have called this morning and it's on hold for such and such reason. Being able to keep track of the volume in my office is absolutely essential, and ANOW helps me to do it faster, better, more efficiently. It'll do the same for you at a cost that is not a cost, yet it's an investment in your future. Check them out. Go to anow.com/coach. One more time. It's anow.com/coach. All right, folks, I'm going to wrap this up pretty quickly because, first of all, it's a mini-sode, and I don't want to stretch this on and on and on. But second of all, in exactly 14 minutes, I have an interview with a virtual assistant, a potential virtual assistant in the Philippines. And so I'm getting ready for that interview, which prompted the idea today, because I've been asked in the past, Dustin, how do you interview a potential BA? My first thought is, well, not much differently than you interview anybody else. Some of the same questions that I would ask anybody, I'm going to ask of a virtual assistant because, hey, they're people with lives and desires and on and on and on, right? And I treat them exactly like I would treat anybody else with a couple of exceptions. For example, one of the big reasons I like to interview people from outside the U.S. is it is a big deal to me that their English be very good. Not just good, but very good. Now, one of the reasons that I've stuck with the Philippines is because individuals in the Philippines learn English alongside their native language from the very beginning. And so they have been speaking English from the time they were toddlers. They learned it in school, their newspapers are in English, their television is in English, and they're very used to the English language. And so I have found that there's been less of a language barrier when I utilize individuals from the Philippines. Okay. So one of the reasons I like to talk to them is I like to hear how their English is. And yes, I put my VAs, depending on who they are, but I put them on the phones. They answer phones. They make phone calls for my business. And I want to make sure that their English is good. So that's one of the differences, one of the small differences that when I'm interviewing somebody from outside the U.S., again, the questions are very similar, but I'm looking for a few different things. One of the other things that is a different thing that I do is I actually have them run an internet speed test while I'm on the phone with them. When I say phone, I mean Zoom, usually is the way I do it, Zoom meeting, or sometimes they like to use Skype. But either way, you can share screens on Skype, and instead of just asking them, how's your internet, how's your speed, how's your upload speed, how's your download speed, I actually say, hey, can you share your screen with me for a second? I want to do an internet test with you. And I go through that process. And by the way, I usually use speedtest.net, and I ask them to share the screen with me because I have them connect to a local server. Okay, so something here in Idaho to run the test. The reason for that is we run a VPN. Virtual protocol network. And because I run a VPN, I want them to be able to have excellent download. And when I say excellent, I mean, okay, let's be fair, good. I want to have good download and upload speed, right? The download needs to be at least 5, and the upload needs to be at least 1. I like to see 1.5 or 2. And I know some of you are saying, really? That's it? Well, that's bare minimum, right? And I have interviewed people that would be a great fit for the job, but their internet speed did not cut the mustard. Okay. So I actually have them run that while I'm on the phone with them. That way they can't fake it. Not that they would, but they can't fake it because they're doing it live and in person with me. Okay. But again, I start out the interview, and let me just share some of the questions that I ask. I won't share the whole list with you. You can find the whole list in the webinar that I will share with you at the end of the program here. But I just start out by saying, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. And I might prompt them and say, tell me a little bit about your education. I'm looking for a college degree. I have found that VAs that have a college degree, and everyone that I've hired with maybe the exception of one have had college degrees. I have found when they have a college degree that they're much easier to work with. They seem to be harder workers. Their command of the English language seems to be a little bit better. Okay, so even more so than it's important to me here locally, when someone's doing tier 1, tier 2 work with me locally, college education to me is not that big of a deal. It's something I look at, and it may bode well if you're competing with someone that doesn't have a college education, but it's not going to be a determiner typically for me on a local basis. It is kind of a determiner for me when I'm working with a virtual assistant. Okay, not that it would make or break the situation, but it's certainly, I put more weight on it. Let's put it that way. So I ask them about their education. I ask them about past work experience, and specifically, have you been a virtual assistant for an employer in the U.S. in the past? Tell me about that. Can I contact your boss? Would he give you a good reference? And I do, by the way, contact their boss and find out, because I want to know, why aren't you working for them anymore? Now, 9 times out of 10, it's because they got let go because they didn't need them anymore. But every once in a while, I do find out things that tell me that, maybe this person wouldn't be the best fit for me. Okay. And so I asked them, why did you leave your last employment? I asked them, what do you know about my company? What attracted you to Appraisal Precision? Okay. I asked them specific things about technology. Do you have dual monitors? Tell me about your computer. How old is it? What's your stats? What's your CPU? What's your RAM? What operating system are you using? Okay. And then, of course, I talk to them about their schedule, what other conflicts that they have. There's not the same Labor Department stipulations outside the U.S. that there are here, though I try to be respectful. I don't ask them if they're pregnant. Okay. I don't ask them about their marital status, but I do say, tell me about your family. And a lot of times that they'll share with that. And I'll say, is there anything else, like another job, school, other commitments that you have that might bump up against your ability to service well here in this industry? Okay. And, other things as well. But these are very straightforward questions that I allow them. Here's a good principle. Okay. In an interview, specifically a job interview, if you are doing more talking than they are, you're doing it wrong. And by the way, I've had to learn that the hard way. As you know, I don't have any problem talking. Okay, that's never been a problem for me. My problem is pausing and waiting and letting them talk. Okay, so keep that in mind. But as you interview individuals outside the U.S., treat them like a human being. They are. okay? And they're going to be doing a great service for you if it works out. Give them an interview that is full and give them an opportunity to tell about themselves and learn about them. And some of the different things obviously are, the internet speed test. You're looking for their English abilities, but for the most part, it's going to be very, very similar to any other job interview that you might do locally. Now, if you want to know more about how to hire VAs, where to find them, how to train them, how to manage them, how to keep track of it, how to pay them, what kind of contracts should you set up? Should you set up a contract with somebody overseas? Check out my webinar. It's called Virtual Assistants, and it is in my product section. It's in the webinars, and it's free for members of my All-Star team. Check it out by going to theappraisercoach.com/products.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.
It is kind of a determiner